Let's go live on another bicycle live stream. It's Saturday the 17th of October at 7:14 a.m. and I'm not sure how many kilometres I've ridden. I didn't check. I can tell you it's warming up nicely on this spring morning. It's going to be a warm day. So let's talk about HSPs. And I'm a proud HSP myself, and I want to talk about the amount of HSPs there are in the world. HSP is a highly sensitive person, and it's something that I discovered, a quality I discovered about myself decades ago, and have sort of, I don't know why, in recent times I've not forgotten about it, but I just haven't really connected with it as strongly as I should have. And, I started listening to videos again this morning about the qualities and the challenges of being HSP. And it's so liberating. It's like rediscovering an old friend, and just to know when you're a HSP that there's nothing wrong with you, that this is the way you are. And, it's very hard. I find it very hard to describe what a HSP is, but I've shared a hell of a lot of videos this morning to help you understand the characteristics of a HSP. But basically, we have a high degree of sensitivity to the world, and the way that comes across is that we have difficulty with things like crowds, loud music, sudden loud noises, certain strong personality types. We find ourselves wanting to be in nature, wanting to be in a state of peace, needing a lot of time out in order to not feel overwhelmed. Because a highly sensitive person is, by definition, highly sensitive, we are easily overwhelmed. But we have amazing traits of empathy and compassion and understanding other people, and communication skills and so forth. So I'm bringing up the HSP topic because during the week I heard somebody, or even the week before, heard somebody talking about somebody else who I would describe as a non-HSP. And in the description of them, they said, "Oh yes, but he's actually quite sensitive." And it got me thinking. It got me thinking about the fact that statistically, supposedly, only 20% of people in the world are HSP. But I don't believe that. I think that's wrong. I think we're all HSP, and I'm going to explain why. Because I've seen enough evidence of people that on the surface don't appear to be HSP seen enough evidence of how actually you only have to scratch the surface a little bit and you see how sensitive they are to realise that all of us are HSP. Now, in addition to expanding on this a little bit, I also want to mention that in a live stream I did last week, which resonated quite well with a few people, I had a very positive compliment from someone who was basically, I'm trying to remember the exact thing that she said, but basically had said something along the lines of, you've really got a great grasp of this, and you're a wonderful person. And I was talking about it I was talking about relationships, and I made a disclaimer that I'm hopeless myself personally in romantic relationships. And this woman replied that she couldn't believe it. So I want to just try and explain that in relation to HSP, that being in a relationship with a HSP is difficult for both parties. Let me just say good morning. Good morning. It's difficult for both parties. It's very difficult for the highly sensitive person because they tend to pick up on the subtle inflections of a person's voice and movement, mannerisms, and we are very, very good at these little nuances. And unfortunately, we become over analytical in relationships, and know often what the other person's intentions are before they even admit it to themselves. This can make it very difficult to be in a relationship with a HSP. It's very difficult for the HSP in that relationship because of this. It's hard to sort of be at peace. And it's hard to be in a relationship with a HSP because I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with a HSP myself, because I would feel like I'd have to walk on eggshells all the time, trying to sort of be aware of how sensitive they are to things. So that's just a follow-on from last week's live stream to explain why my success in romantic relationships is crap. However, in platonic relationships, friendships, this is where HSPs thrive. Let me also put a disclaimer there that my personal experience is not meant to mean that HSPs are crap in relationships. There is the right person for HSPs, and you just got to be in the right space to know that, and a HSP will know that. And I've personally had, again, following on from there, personally had the experience of trying to connect numerous times with people that are obviously not the right energetic connection for me. So I proved time and time again that it just doesn't work. It's just a waste of time and space. Okay, so why do I disagree with the statistics when it comes to HSPs, that supposedly only 20% of the population are HSPs? Well, statistically, one-third to one-half of the population are considered introverts. And within those introverts, 70% are considered HSPs. And somehow that comes back to being 20% of the overall population. Are you with me? I know there's a bit of maths there. I won't give you any more. But what I have noticed, and going back to the earlier example of a friend of mine saying, this person, he's actually quite sensitive, but he puts on this false bravado. That really got me thinking about how that applies to pretty much everyone in some degree. And so I started looking at it from a spiritual point of view, and I even started thinking about my old man, because my old man literally would say when I was growing up, real men don't cry. And when you're the son of a stoic father who doesn't believe you should express your emotions, and you yourself are a HSP, I can tell you that's a challenge. Now, while I think of it, while it's fresh in my mind, another thing is you'll find a lot of vegans are HSPs, and I'm not sure if it works the other way around, that a lot of HSPs are vegans, but it would make sense. Because did you know, talking about veganism and animals, that apparently over 100 species of animals are HSP? That makes sense as well. We see how sensitive animals are. I mean, they're just so sensitive. You've got to be so delicate with them. Did you also know, and I know I've gone off track a little bit here, that at an early age, like really early age, shortly after birth, maybe the first year or so, boys are actually measured as being more sensitive than girls. That amazed me and impressed me. However, culturally, it's beaten out of them, so to speak, so that by the age of 4, it's not, in a lot of cultures, in Western culture, it's not culturally appropriate for a boy to be sensitive. However, in Eastern cultures, it's a valued trait. So that's an interesting thing to keep in mind too. So in our Western culture, it's more difficult to be a sensitive boy. And I've certainly had the experience of that, and I'm sure there's a lot of other guys that can relate to what it's like growing up as a HSP, as a male, and being subjected to all the taunts and torments from people who don't understand our sensitivity and who are feeling afraid within themselves to show their own feelings. So this brings me back full circle to why I think our entire population is highly sensitive. From a spiritual point of view, we have the most sensitive soul We are so fragile, so easily disturbed, I guess maybe the right word is. We have a sensitive soul, and we have an extremely sensitive false ego as well, which is ironic, because the false ego is covering the sensitivity of the soul. So people that appear on the surface to be non-HSP are people that have from their false ego, they have false covering of bravado and protectiveness to protect themselves from this sensitivity that it scares the hell out of them to face and to embrace, to admit their vulnerability to their mates, to their friends, even to their family. It just scares the hell out of them. We don't want to admit that we're weak, that we're vulnerable, that we're fragile, that we are needy. We don't want to admit it. We'd rather put on this false bravado of we've got it all together, and everything's fine, and I don't need to go to the doctor, and it's only a flesh wound, and Monty Python reference there, and that whole it's an insane way of living. It's so unhealthy, and I've observed it from the youngest age and just thought, this is crazy. Why are you so afraid to admit? I've got to focus on this intersection. Why are you so afraid to admit that you have feelings, and that it's okay to embrace them? It's so sad that culturally our society is, for men especially, is so afraid to face them. So the point I'm making here is that we need to be aware that all of us are sensitive all of our life, and it takes an immense amount of energy to not be authentic. So for all those people that on the surface put on this false bravado, it doesn't take much to scratch the surface and for them to get easily irritated and instantly angry with us, or abusive, or some sort of reaction. It's the reaction that proves how sensitive somebody is. The supposedly stoic, real men don't cry person. Rubbish. Doesn't exist. What it is a person that's so scared, so afraid that they have a false personality covering the sensitivity that we all have. We are all highly sensitive. We are all shocked by cruelty and injustice, suffering. We're all shocked by it. Some of us feel it deeply, and we're called highly sensitive people. The rest of us also feel it deeply, but we're shit scared of facing those feelings. So we cover it up. So this is a message I want to make in this morning's live stream, is that everybody, in my belief, is actually highly sensitive. And in fact, with that in mind, it is the ones who have perfected this persona of pretending that they don't have any sensibilities, and that they're tough and macho and all that, whether it's a guy or a girl, because a lot of women also do this nowadays, and which I also find really sad. But when you have somebody that's perfected this over many, many years, many decades, this personality, this covering, these are the people who most need to feel the love that they have been running from, that most need to open up to the sensitivity that they are so scared to admit is part of them. We are all highly sensitive, and let's keep that in mind in our compassionate dealings with others. Be aware, those that are the most difficult to deal with, those that are the hardest to love, are the ones that need it the most. Thank you for watching. I hope you've gotten something out of this. live vegan and save lives. And I'll speak with you